Hi everybody, welcome back. I hope that you're doing okay. Now, if you've managed to get some seeds growing, maybe you started planting with me a couple of weeks ago and the shoots are coming through now, and you're at the stage where you're wondering when and how do you transplant your seeds, then stick around because in this video, I'm going to answer those questions as well as giving you a very special secret tip to make sure your plants grow as well as possible. So you may be wanting to move your seedlings to an outdoor destination. Perhaps you're lucky enough to have a veg patch or a patio or balcony where you've got some grow bags, or maybe you might just want to continue growing them indoors but you need to put them into some bigger pots. So you're looking for the signs to find out whether or not your plants are ready to do this. I'm actually going to be doing a combination of both. We're lucky enough to have a small garden here and we've created a very little vegetable patch today, in fact, that we're going to be filling up over the next few days and weeks. But we're also going to be growing some tomatoes indoors just so we can keep a closer eye on them in some pots on the windowsill. So the first thing that you want to look out for is what are called true leaves. Now what I've got here are some tomato seeds, and these are the seeds that we actually took out of our shop bought tomatoes and just popped straight in here. So we did that just a little bit less than a couple of weeks ago and they've already come through quite well and quite strong here. But you don't want to look necessarily too closely and worry too much about how tall your plants, your seedlings have got, because that's not the best sign of how strong and how ready they are, because if they've actually been deprived of light, they would have stretched themselves out a bit more, reaching for that light. So don't worry too much about measuring them and thinking about that, but look for those real true leaves. So on here we've got some true leaves, we've got 4 on here, and on each of these 2 plants here we've got 3. And they're not the first shoots that you see coming through down there. They're not the first sign, the first green leaves you see, but they're the next ones that are more established and they let you know that they're ready to go. Now, if you didn't see my last video about getting seeds going and growing indoors, and you're in a situation where you're indoors and you want to get gardening and you want to get some stuff growing, just something to note is that you don't necessarily need to have all the equipment. I have got some pots here, but we've started off some of our seeds just in these fruit containers. So these were just some grape containers that we had. So there's lots of items that you've probably got around your house that you can use to start growing things with. And like I said before, these seeds here are just from shop bought tomatoes, so you don't even necessarily need to have packets of seeds. So I'll explain a bit more about the outdoor transplanting in a minute, but if you're in a situation where you can't transplant outdoors because you haven't got an outdoor space, or perhaps you just prefer to continue growing indoors for the moment, then that's what I'm going to show you now. These are the tomato seeds that I've got here. So these are the seedlings that have come through, and I'm going to move these. I've got 3 here. I'm going to move them each into one of these pots here. Now, tomato plants do like quite a sheltered environment, which is why I'm going to continue growing them indoors here. We've got a south-facing window. We're lucky enough to have that. And outdoors, our garden actually is quite exposed. So if it gets windy, that picks up. And I thought it's possibly not the best place for these tomato plants. Hence, we're going to carry on indoors. So the things that we need to think about when we're actually physically transferring these are that we don't want to give the plant basically too much of a shock. So we need to be really, really careful how we handle the roots when we move them out. So if possible, pick one point on which to touch the plant, the seedling, and make sure you just touch it in the same place each time to really minimize the damage that you can do to it. And if possible, avoid touching the roots at all. So I've just got these really basic pots and I've got a plastic plate because that's all I had available to just put that on for the drainage. I'm just going to fill this up with compost. Now I've filled my pot full of compost and now I'm just going to use this little dabber here, but actually a pencil or something would do just as well, to make a little hole in the middle where I can transplant my seedling. So we just need to gently take these out of here, handling them as little as possible. And we're just going to roll them in to the hole. Just make sure that's securely in, and then it's ready to water. So when you're watering it, you just want to make sure that you've got a watering can with a rose on the end like this so that you're not drenching it. Obviously it's quite vulnerable at the moment. This is when you can lose your plants when you're transplanting them. If you're not careful enough with them, they can go into a kind of shock. So just water them very, very gently, and you want to make sure that the soil is then moist. You don't want it to be completely drenched, but you want to keep it moist. It's now going to need regular watering, and also with tomato plants in particular, they do need feeding. Obviously you can buy tomato food from the shops and from the garden centres, but as they're not open at the moment, if you are struggling to get hold of tomato food, you can actually make your own fertilisers at home. There's various ways that you can do them, but I think the kind of safest one that doesn't involve strange things like using chemicals in your cuttings of your hair is to use things like coffee granules, used tea bags, and also eggshells. You can crush eggshells, and if you start to collect these things in a jar and then you put some water in and leave them for a couple of weeks, then you can shake them up and then strain them out, and you will actually have a really nutrient rich fertiliser that you can use. So that's a bit of an emergency homemade option if you can't get your hands on the real stuff, which you will need to start giving to your tomato plant every week, around about every week from when it starts to flower. They're the basic rules for transplanting your seedlings indoors, and I was using tomato plants, but the same applies for other plants as well. Generally follow the same rules. We've got some peppers that are coming through here, and I'm going to transplant those over the next couple of days. But just be really, really careful at this stage, because it is a very critical stage of your growing experience. Right, now we're going to talk about transplanting your seedlings outside. If you're lucky enough to have an outdoor space, this might be something that you're thinking about, or maybe even on a patio or a balcony and you just want to transplant some stuff into grow bags. Now, I'm going to show you my carrots because that's what I've got going on at the moment. We were lucky enough that we had these for a project we were working on before the whole lockdown started. So we had these fancy looking units here, but as I said before, if you fancy getting some seeds growing indoors, the most important thing is that you get them in a container where you can water them, that's got drainage at the bottom, where you can get them some light and some heat. Now, to create basically the same environment as this, you can use things like these fruit trays and just put cling film over the top and then place them on something like a plate, and then you'll get the drainage, you'll get all the ingredients you need to get them going, which is exactly what we did for this one. We've got some pepper seeds here that we just took out of a pepper that we were eating. But the carrots are the ones that are ready. Now, carrots, in terms of that question of when are your seedlings ready to transplant, sometimes you can leave them too long. So you want to be looking for those early leaves, but you also want to be careful that they don't get too established in this kind of environment, because then that can actually traumatize them when you move them over. So these are well ready now, and actually I really wouldn't want to leave them much longer. We built a little outdoor vegetable patch today, knocked one together out of some wood that we had down in the corner of the garden. We've turned that over, we've got compost in it and soil in it, so it's all ready to go. So all we had to do was basically make the lines. We've got more than enough carrots, so we're probably going to put some of these in some grow bags as well. So we made the lines down the centre, then we used our dibber to make the holes for each of the carrots. And then we just gently lined the carrots up next to the holes, and then we dropped the soil in, which brought those roots down into the ground, and it meant that we didn't actually have to touch the roots too much. So it's a really careful, gentle way of getting your plants into the ground without risking damaging them and traumatizing them. Once again, the same thing applies when you're watering your carrots or whatever you plants or vegetables you've planted into your vegetable patch. Just make sure initially, while they're at that delicate, gentle stage, that you use a watering can with a rose on it, just so you can just nice and softly give them some water without kind of damaging them at all. So that's it for today. Hopefully that gives you enough information to get going or get on to the next bit of your growing process. I hope if you started growing with me a couple of weeks ago, if I managed to inspire you to do anything, then your plants are going really, really well, and I hope that you're enjoying the fruits or the vegetables of your labour very, very soon. If you usually follow my channel for my renovation content and my renovation vlog content, that will be back very soon. We've got lots going on. We are ready to bring you our nearly complete kitchen, lots of other bits and pieces that we're doing, so make sure you do keep coming back. If you enjoyed this video, as ever, please do give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe, and I'd love to see you again very soon. But that's all for today. Bye bye.